Hey, is this thing on? All right. Happiness and hormones. Our lesson today is about love, belonging, safety, self-actualization, becoming the happiest version of yourself based on the hormones that are being released in your brain at all times. Now, we've got this brain structure here called the amygdala that is responsible for emotions. It's in the center of our brain. It's right next to the spot called the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, which is a lot of your emotions tied to your memories. There's another section in here called the nucleus accumbens, which is, again, in the center of your brain, which has evolved in all animals a long time ago to just keep them alive. So you have to remember things that are emotional, whether they're scary, whether they are good, happy, whatever. And your nucleus accumbens, also nearby here, is responsible for receiving dopamine when you complete something and there's this good reward feeling like any sort of drug. Now, you can release these drugs at will without having to take drugs that are also super negative for your health by learning about them. Now, your dopamine is that reward drug. When you do things right and you feel good about that, you can become addicted to exercise or playing basketball or playing violin, hanging out with your friends, walking your dog, eating good food, cooking, great conversations, holding hands with a loved one. That addiction can release dopamine to the nucleus accumbens, that reward center right there. And because that emotion is good, we will remember that those sorts of activities are good for us. Except we can have sustained dopamine, a dopamine drip. Instead of like a super high from some sort of like artificial drug, we can have good feelings throughout our day, multiple times a day, every time you turn something in, every time you get a smile from a teacher or, a high five from a friend, a fist bump from someone you love, for some doing anything, any sort of accomplishment, all associated with dopamine and good vibes from the amygdala and memory in the hippocampus. Now, there's another spot in our brain here, the pons and the medulla. The pons right here, this almond-shaped bad boy in the brainstem, again, in the middle of the brain. So all animals have evolved this a long time ago. Breathing in the pons and heart rate in the medulla oblongata right here, okay? Now, those things also are very closely associated with our emotions. If you cannot breathe, if your heart is racing, you remember those emotions and you remember those things. So you can kind of control your emotions and slow your heart rate by breathing. All these things are so closely associated in our brain that they're very easily connected and they influence each other a lot. Now, you can also understand the changes in your emotions with the stress coming from the hormone cortisol, which is a naturally produced thing that is released every time that you wake up and you see bright light outside, sunrises and bright light. That can stimulate the release of cortisol and set your circadian rhythm, which is essential to getting good sleep. That circadian rhythm starts you, wakes you up. You have a certain level of stress, not high stress, right? But a certain level of low stress, which gets you awake, activating your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, or freeze response if there's a threat to your life. If there's something super emotional and super threatening, then your cortisol spikes and goes super high, and that stressful sympathetic nervous system is going to keep you alive. That adrenaline is going to be released, and you will be performing. Your muscles and your heart and your brain will all be super focused to perform to keep you alive in that fight or flight response. Okay. Your heart beats fast, your breath goes fast. But that cortisol spike in a life-threatening situation should be momentary, should happen a few times a day, maybe for most animals, because this is how they've evolved to just experience that on a very short time scale. And like your dog freaking out when the mailman comes by, or right when they're about to go out for a walk, your dog loses his mind, and then it comes back and chills out. That's that cortisol going up into the high sympathetic, peaking, adrenaline high and performance, and then you chill out. So this happens at the end of a basketball game, at the end of a soccer game. You see everybody spiking their adrenaline, spiking their cortisol, getting super amped for moments. Okay, your cortisol can only spike for moments. However, what you need is a low level of stress, a low level cortisol, low level adrenaline, so you can perform all day at school. And then you need to take a break at lunch, or you take certain breaks during the day and let your cortisol and adrenaline come down. And then you go home and relax for a bit. Then when you're experiencing homework, then you can raise your cortisol, raise your adrenaline so that you can perform and you can focus because you're activating the part of your brain that actually thinks. So that human part, to understand all of this stuff that I'm talking about, the human part of your brain has evolved later. It's been added on to the central part, and it's called the cerebral cortex, or the cortex. Over here, this is where we do calculations, calculus. We can accept challenges and make complicated choices. This is where we can control our emotions, understand our emotions, where we can control cortisol and how to switch from a sympathetic nervous system into a parasympathetic, how to understand that we are not in a life-threatening situation and we need to lower our cortisol. All of this complex calculations, this happens in the cortex, okay? And so you can understand that deep breathing can reduce your cortisol and adrenaline, put you in a parasympathetic state when you need to rest and digest after this video, because the sympathetic state is going to help you learn and absorb information. You are receiving senses, right? This is like intense situations that you need to pay attention to, okay? Whether they're really life-threatening or they're just important, these are things you need to pay attention to, and you're learning and receiving a lot of information. But then later, when you get good sleep and you're resting and you're eating and you're relaxing, that balance in your day with your parasympathetic nervous system, which can be activated by deep, slow breathing, relaxation, that is when you are processing memories in your brain. You're not necessarily receiving any outside information. You are processing your memories. This is why dreaming is so important when sleeping and why sleeping is so important. So your sleep can be activated at the end of the day when your cortisol naturally flows down, and you should not be having caffeine and you should be reducing your stress. Then when you watch the sunset, we've evolved to watch the sunset and enjoy the sunset because that triggers the release of melatonin. Melatonin, the sunset, brings us into sleep, and we can have a rest and digest where we are healing, recovering, relaxing, and that parasympathetic. And we are going through this cycle every day, multiple times a day, going back and forth of high stress, low stress, medium stress, no stress, high stress, medium stress, low stress, no stress. We're just constantly going through that. And if you understand how to move through the stressful periods and release your adrenaline and your cortisol to get your dopamine going so you can become addicted to doing good things in your life, getting that reward for being recognized for finishing homework or, taking care of your chores at home. These don't have to be negative things. You can choose to change the emotion associated in your amygdala, right? And you'll remember that. So getting those rewards, getting that dopamine going, the whole point of this is really to be happy. Now, our happiness comes at the very top of a pyramid developed by a guy named Maslow in psychology. And he talked about hierarchy of needs. Now, at the bottom of the pyramid, we have two of these pyramids here. The bottom of the pyramid says physiology. This is how your body functions. This is like basic functions of the body. And so this is like breathing, eating, sleeping, and maintaining good body temperature. This you need to take care of first before you take care of any other needs. So you take care of your basic physiologic needs first, and then you can start to look for safety needs. You have to take care of these safety needs. So you're like stepping up this ladder, kind of like graduating, okay? And so then you're starting to feel safe. You need a home, you need money to pay for the things that you need, to take care of that stuff, right? And then you move into love and belonging. And love and belonging comes into place only if you feel safe and your needs are met, right? You know that if you're hungry or you haven't slept well, you're going to stay down here and you can't move into caring about other people or true happiness, which lies at the top here. But if you have your food and water and you feel safe and people love you and you have friendships and you belong part of a community because human beings have evolved to be social creatures, Then you move into the third step of love and belonging, starting to feel a little bit happier and more fulfilled, long-term satisfaction and dopamine rewards here, okay? Then you start to move into esteem, where you respect other people, you respect yourself, and you have self-esteem, status, people are recognizing you, you're recognizing yourself. This is where we start to get happier as well. And then you can graduate to the top of the pyramid, which is tough to get to, but so incredibly worth it. And that's where I want you to get. It's self-actualization, where you actually become the self that you were meant to be. This is where you find your purpose and you start being selfless, giving back. This is where you find your purpose in life, and it's not about money anymore. This is where you get some deep fulfillment, joy, and happiness, not some short-term stuff here that it can just be bought by money. Up here, money doesn't really matter. You have more important things in life, okay? And so you can move up through these things if you understand that the basics of taking care of your sleep, making sure that you are eating right? And then understanding that if you are feeling unsafe, that's something that you want to take care of. You want to understand that if your amygdala and your emotions are triggering your cortisol and your stress level is spiking because you feel like there's a threat, like you feel unsafe because your teacher just gave you a big assignment to do next week, you can realize, wait a minute, I am safe. I'm totally fine. I can drop my cortisol. I can relax. I have everything that I need. I have my needs taken care of. People love me. I belong in a community. So, okay, now I can start to move up and start to use the human part of my brain, the cortex on the outside, to start to actually be creative, to solve problems, to do difficult, complex tasks with my brain, only if these basic needs are met. Now, once you understand these things with your cortex, you can understand, okay, let me take care of those things. Certain things are not threatening my life, and I don't need to activate my sympathetic nervous system and go freaking crazy, and feel so threatened and have this high cortisol and lose my mind, because I'm okay. I have my needs met, right? I'm fortunate. I'm lucky. I have chosen to move up into these higher levels of happiness where I can finally start to give back and not just care about myself and be, frustrated and just selfish and just getting quick things and quick fixes. Now, speaking of quick fixes, a big part of this is talking about addiction. Now, our addiction is associated with the nucleus accumbens in the dopamine reward pathway. And we can become addicted to good things. We can also become addicted to things that are not so good with us. A big problem that we have is that sugar is something that is addictive. We've evolved for the last 2 million years as homo sapiens to live in an environment where sugar was very rare. We walking around, the world just does not have that much fruit, does not have that much honey. These things are rare, they're hard to get. You have to wait for the fruit to be in season, and it's not being shipped all over the place. So for 2 million years, sugar was very rare, and most fruit was not artificially selected to be that sweet. Only for the last 10,000 years has agriculture selected specific fruits to be outrageously sweet, much bigger, much sweeter. And so now we're having all sorts of sweet stuff, not just in fruits that are outrageously sweet, but also in tons of processed food that, Hershey's and Coke and all those other processed food companies that make snacks and fake foods, all of that stuff is hijacking your dopamine reward pathway in your nucleus accumbens and making you feel like you have that need, that physiological need at the bottom, like I have to get that sugar, I have to get that. I can't focus on anything you're trying to teach me. I must get that sugar. That's what an addiction is. And then you get that sugar and then you relax. You don't care about anything. But then you're going to need it again. So the problem is that the sugar makes your cortisol and your sympathetic nervous system spike and drop, makes your energy spike and drop. Now, a much more stable form of energy in the mitochondria is going to be carbs. And an even stabler form than carbs is going to be fat. So if you want your energy to last for a long time and for you to have a stable mood, we move into burning fat and carbs as a better source of energy. With the sugar that comes in, everyone knows the sugar rush, everyone knows the sugar high and whatnot. That is something that goes into your mitochondria of your cells and just punches out a bunch of ATP, and then you have a rush, but then you're going to crash later, and your body takes time to shift over to burning fat, right? And if your body is, because of processed food that is being marketed to us all over the place to be addicting, it's been made to be addicting. It's been marketed, it's on all of your media, social media, everywhere you go, in the grocery stores and whatnot, they are marketing fake food to you, processed food that is just full of sugar, fat, and carbs. And if you're having this 3 times a day with snacks and stuff, your body has way too much energy and it doesn't know what to do with it. It's not stable. And this is not how we've evolved for the last 2 million years. We've evolved for the last 2 million years to have some food, plants, animals, real food occasionally, and then to be able to store energy and hold it for the long term. We can have stable emotions. We can stably think. We can use our brain. We can, not be down here in the physiological Maslow's hierarchy of needs where we're constantly worried about where's the next sugar? Where's the next sugar? I need a snack. I need some more. I'm hungry all the time. You'll find that humans, for the longest time, they weren't struggling with this because we had different foods that we were more evolved to eat, plants and animals, real food. But it's not your fault. This addiction has been marketed to us and sold to us by a lot of companies that are just trying to make a lot of money, which is also sad because, as we know, at the top of Maslow's pyramid, it's not about money. It's about giving back. It's about having a purpose. It's about doing the right things and being selfless and helping other people. Money doesn't matter at the top of that pyramid. So if we're just making money by making people sick and, getting them addicted to sugar, what's the end game for that? How does the end of the life go there, right? So think about that.